Kia ora, good morning everyone, Richard here, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is a follow-up to my original Pergear CFExpress card review. I will share with you my experience after using the Pergear CFExpress card for almost a year. We'll also have a look at two of the new CFExpress card that Pergear has just released and see if this new card has fixed some of the issues that I noticed with the original card. And the usual disclaimer before we start, Pergear sent me all these CFExpress cards for this review and also the original review, but this is an independent review and they won't even be able to watch this video before I publish it. As I've mentioned at the beginning, Pergear has recently released some more CFExpress cards. They are all the CFExpress Type B card, the biggest CFExpress card that are used by almost every company apart from Sony. We have 64GB, 128GB, 256GB and 1TB. Adding the original 512GB card, which I have previously tested, there are a total of 5 different cards covering from 64GB up to 1TB. All the cards have a 5-year manufacturer warranty and the outside of the card is mostly made of metal. The 64 and 128GB cards, Pergear call them CFEB Lite, while the higher capacity cards are called CFEB Pro. One other difference between the Lite and Pro cards is the speed. According to the specs, the maximum write speed of the 64GB CFEB Lite card is only 300 MB per second, while the 1TB CFEB Pro card is 1300 MB per second. So there's quite a big difference in terms of speed. I've done some tests to see what is the actual speed and I will share with you my results in a minute. Now, the retail price of memory cards can change quite a bit for many reasons, but right now the time that when I work on this review, the Pergear 64GB CFExpress card is $69 and the 1TB card is $399. It's on their website or Amazon. By the way, I do have an affiliated link in the video description below, so if you do want to buy any of these cards, it would be great if you can use one of these links to support me. But anyway, the price of this Pergear CFExpress cards is definitely cheap. The 64GB card is cheaper than all the 64GB XQD card or even the UHS 2 V90 SD card in the market. And the 1TB Pergear card is like around half the price of the average 1TB CFExpress card in the market, despite it has a very similar spec. With pretty much any memory card, there is usually a speed written on the label of the card, but that rated speed usually refers to the maximum speed, and to be honest, just like the photo of a burger from a fast food chain's advertisement, that is really more or less just a reference. So to see how fast these Pergear CFExpress cards are, I did some tests and I measured the speed of these cards using two different applications, the Blackmagic Disk Speed Test and the AJA System Test, and I averaged the results from these two applications. When running the Blackmagic test, I left it running for 15 minutes with each of the card to see if any of the card would slow down dramatically once it warms up a bit. And I'm happy to say none of the card that I've tested seems to have any significant slowdown after running the test continuously for 15 minutes. I've also tested a 64GB Sony XQD card and a Nexa V90 UHS 2 SDXC card to give some comparison numbers. And here are my test results. The fastest card listed at the top and the slowest one at the bottom. Not surprisingly, the Pergear 1TB CFExpress Pro card is the fastest card with 592 megabyte per second write speed and 757 megabyte per second read speed. It is really not bad at all for a budget CFExpress card. Compared to the Sony GXQD card, the Pergear CFExpress card's write speed is about 300% the speed of the Sony card, and the read speed is about 235%. When I did my Nikon Z9 review, I've also done a bit of tests comparing the maximum number of photos that I can get with the Pergear 1TB card compared to the Sony XQD card when shooting in burst mode before the camera starting to slow down. The result varies a bit, depends on the camera settings, but I got from 25% to 300% bigger buffer when I switched from the Sony XQD card to the 1GB Pergear CFExpress card. The Pergear 512GB CFExpress card is only just slightly slower than the Pergear 1TB card in terms of write speed. The read speed I got is actually slightly faster, but since the difference is so small, so I think it is just the fact that the speed test is never 100% accurate, and that's one of the reasons why I did the test using two different applications and average out the results. The 64GB Pergear CFEB Lite card is a lot slower than the previous two Pergear cards. I only got 73 megabyte per second write speed and 302 megabyte per second read speed. Both numbers are not really that fast. In fact, the Sony GXQD card that I tested has slightly faster read speed and significantly faster write speed. The Lumix UHS-2 V90 SD card is the slowest card despite it is already a V90 card. While its write speed is similar to the 64GB Pergear CFEB Lite card, the read speed is much slower than any other cards that I tested this time. But the price of this SD card is actually more expensive than the Pergear 64GB CFExpress card. A lot of people always thought CFExpress cards are a lot more expensive than SD cards, but I guess this test result shows it is not always true, especially if you are comparing cards with very similar speed. When I did my original Pergear CFExpress card review, I have tested the card with a few different cameras and card readers, including the Canon R5, Nikon Z7 II, Z6, and all of them works almost perfectly. And I can even do 8K RAW recording with the Canon R5 for a reasonable amount of time until the Canon R5 overheat itself. The only issue that I had was with the Sony MRWG1 card reader, which I found if I insert the card normally, the reader can't really read it, and turns out if I use my finger to keep pushing the card and hold it, then the Sony card reader would work as well. I reported that back to Pergear and they told me that's because the 512GB card that they sent me was a early pre-production sample, and that will be fixed in the final production version. So this time when I received the new 64GB and 1TB cards, I tested with the same Sony card reader again. And yes, the new cards can work fine with the Sony MRWG1 card reader. I no longer need to keep push and hold the card for it to work, so Pergear has indeed fixed that issue. And I've also tested the 1TB card with the Nikon Z9 running version 1.0 firmware, including shooting 8K 10-bit video. I also tested with a Z6 II and Z6, both running the latest firmware, and it works fine, no problem as well. So in terms of compatibility, this Pergear CFExpress card seems to be pretty good, but CFExpress card compatibility is still a bit of problem in general, even for cards from the bigger brands. So I definitely recommend you to check out Pergear's website, as they do have a list of cameras that they have tested for you to confirm if the card would work fine with your camera or not. Oh, one more thing I want to mention is Pergear do recommend using their CFExpress cards with their own CFExpress card reader. In my original review of the Pergear 512GB CFExpress card, one thing I said I want to do is to keep using the card after the review. It's because I want to see whether the card is reliable or not over a longer period of time. So I did continue use that card regularly since then. I used the card almost every day over the last year, and I'm happy to tell you that I've encountered zero issues at all. I didn't have any corrupted photos or video, and I didn't notice any other issues at all. So I think I can say with a lot more confidence now that the reliability of the Pergear 512GB card appears to be pretty good. At least as good as the other cards from a major brand after almost a year of regular usage. It's not very often that I would do a long-term review or revisit the same product again after using it for a longer period of time. But this time I got the chance to do this with this Pergear CFExpress cards. The biggest selling point of these cards is definitely the price. They are one of the cheapest CFExpress cards in the market right now. The Pergear 64GB CFExpress card is really cheap. It's cheaper than all the 64GB XQD card in the market by quite a lot, and even cheaper than a lot of the faster SD card in the market. So that makes it a really good choice for people who don't want to spend too much money on memory cards, but they bought a new camera that do require CFExpress card. However, its speed is not really that great. It's even slower than the Sony XQD card I tested, and that definitely is the biggest downside of this Pergear CFE Lite card. On the other hand, the Pergear 1TB CFE Pro card doesn't have speed issue. Both the write and read speed are great. Even recording the highest quality 8K 10-bit video with the Nikon Z9, it is not a problem, and if you look at dollar per gigabyte, it is really fantastic value for money. With this Pergear CFExpress cards, my biggest concern previously was reliability, as it doesn't matter how fast or how cheap a memory card is. If it is not reliable, it is basically not worth buying. But now, after using their 512GB card for almost a year with no issues at all, it does give me a lot more confidence about the reliability of these Pergear CFExpress cards. Now, I don't really think I would do a third review of these Pergear CFExpress cards, but I will keep using them in the near future. So if you want to check if I have encountered any issues with any of these cards, just drop a comment below and I'll be happy to give you my update report.